Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Brick+Work Podcast. This is our first episode of 2021. Definitely looking forward to finding our way back this year in terms of everyone getting vaccinated and hopefully doing these episodes in office, in our office in downtown LA would be great. But let me go ahead and welcome our first guest. Cameron Hildreth, who is the founding principal of Hilco Development. Hey, Cameron.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of 2021. So I'd like to start these things off with just, if you could share with our audience, your background and kind of, context and how you got into the industry, and then maybe segue right into what Hilco Development does.
Yeah, for sure. So I started out in the construction side of things, grew up in the trades, and got out of school, did the MRED thing, and started working for a boutique resale developer out in Arizona. Kind of transferred that over to work with the Irvine company, did some ground up projects for them in over by Irvine Spectrum, Laguna Hills area, and then up in Santa Clara.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good time, loved working for them, but wanted something a little more creative, went to go work for Caruso. So worked on the Grove, worked on the Americana, and the big project I did with them, well, a couple of them were the CBRE building in downtown Glendale, and then the Pacific Palisades Village. And they got,
wait a minute. I gotta stop here. These are like marquee projects. These are big name developers. That Glendale project, I go to Americana all the time, so I am very well aware of. It's the Masonic temple, right? That they converted. Yeah. Awesome, amazing.
Yeah, so I worked on that. The end of that building, getting that build out in CBRE done, getting that little retail center that's a part of that project done, and then rolled right into Palisades, and that was a career. It was a apex of my career at this point. So
awesome.
It was really cool, knocked a lot of things out on the list, and it was great.
Yeah, it's funny. Everything you're saying too. First, my partner, Alex Irvine, gets confused with Irvine companies. So every time I introduce, my partner and I founded Brick+Work, Alex Irvine, of the Irvine. And he obviously doesn't necessarily say no sometimes, so he lets people think whatever they want. But it's funny you said that. And then the next thing is the Palisades Village. I actually worked with a developer that were buying up houses all around, like blocks within blocks of that, because they saw that obviously the project was getting worked on. They knew there were going to be a pickup of demand and people that want to live adjacent to there. So that was a great project. So
it's really cool because it's very neighborhood feel.
Yeah. Now, so let's go right into it with Hilco. So you kind of went out on your own and kind of share with us what you provide now and what you're doing.
Yeah. So our business is basically development, project management, anything from like phase one all the way through turnover of construction. So a lot of the stuff I've worked on lately is had a little bit of a dichotomy. We've either worked in ground up stuff with a lot of environmental remediation, heavy engineering, site development stuff for mostly industrial projects out in the old oil field properties near Long Beach.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then obviously I still keep my my foot in the water over with Caruso and Irvine Company, and we still do some high-end retail stuff. I'm actually over at the Grove today doing some work.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. And so let's get kind of now, let's go into more specifics in, I think I've had conversations with developers. I've had conversations with brokers. I mean, there's numerous challenges with development, right? From A to Z, soup to nuts. So yeah, just share with us kind of like, obviously working with these marquee names and projects, I'm sure you got insight and maybe you've learned a lot from the challenges. Maybe they've already created ways to avoid them, and you were like, wow, that was a smart move on their part. But they got big for a reason, right? Everyone, I guess, makes mistakes in the beginning, learn from them, get better at these next projects. So can you share what you've learned and then now what you provide your clients in avoiding some of those pitfalls?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my experience has been with like destination retail, right? And destination retail between COVID and the other issues that have happened at the Grove lately, it's been hard, right? So
Yeah.
how do we re-engage that consumer confidence in destination retail and get people back? I think some of the bigger guys in the space, like Irvine and Caruso, and those people have done really well at supporting their tenants. And I think supporting their tenants is the key for the retail space. I've also had the benefit of working on the industrial side, and I mean, it's a boon over there. You know, I think COVID has realigned the way we're going to do business moving forward. We just need to be ready for that. And I think that's probably stronger plays in the industrial market, to be honest.
Yeah, what specifically? So supporting tenants, right? So let's just put 2020 right here in full focus. So, you know, whether they're, you know, national, you know, tenants, or maybe smaller regional players, or maybe even the real small, like, is there open dialogue? Is there kind of helping understanding this environment and being open to deferring some of these payments, or working to rework them or lower them? You know, are you talking about that kind of flexibility?
So, I mean, that sort of flexibility, but also like the on the ground flexibility, you know, like Irvine Company was out ahead of everybody else in getting their tenants patios so they could make money to pay their rent.
Yeah.
And I think having that flexibility and also educating them on, you know, the ways to stay safe and operate their businesses in this climate is key.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of owners don't really consider that as part of their scope, but I think
they just collect the rent and kind of do the minimum requirements,
right?
Expectations, yeah.
And if you're willing to go that extra step, you're going to protect yourself and you're going to protect your tenants. That's just kind of what I've observed.
Yeah, that's smart. So, you know, I guess now let's go into, do you offer any services or support for like mixed use or housing? What's kind of your take on what's going on now, given it's the new year? Hopefully we're going to get past this COVID sometime this year, but what's your insights on just housing projects or mixed use projects?
So I live in Long Beach, right? And Long Beach is the hot spot right now for multifamily, and it's great, and I love it. Obviously, I think COVID has shook, you know, it's shaken some of the willingness for people to invest in multifamily because rents aren't where they used to be. But we're still in California, you know, it's not going anywhere. And we have a housing shortage, and it's bad. And the state is starting to work with us, and the cities are starting to work with us on how to fix that. So a lot of the stuff I've been a part of are like infill projects. So 200-300 units on the high side to 20 units on the low side, doing a lot of infill. And I think, you know, we're going to have some rough times getting back to where we were, but I don't think it's going anywhere, and I don't think that should shake the confidence. And, you know, kind of on the services that I bring to the table or what we've done, you know, we really work with the planning department and get through that stuff. And a lot of what we've had to deal with, at least in the entitlement side and in the infill side, has been environmentally impacted properties. And I feel like a lot of the good deals in LA, people get afraid of them because, you know, it's got oil problems, it's got methane issues, it's got this, it's got that. And if you can just find the right people and line up with the right consultants, you can figure out those deals all day long.
Oh, that's great. That's great opportunity, I guess, right, to look for then.
Yeah.
To get scared off from those projects. So, you know, we really like to also talk about, like, look, you know, all the typical mixed use or apartment developers out there, they tend to build similarly same products, and we get it. We understand why, right? It's just concrete box for parking. Hopefully don't have to go sub, but sometimes you just have to, and then you go above grade and you build the wood stick figure because it just kind of pencils and makes sense, right? But you know, there are certain properties and sites that don't pencil, but we'd like units to be still built on there, right? And so some of the developers are looking at, you know, I spoke with Crate Modular, and they're taking shipping containers, but obviously that's just in the very prelim stages for massive adoption, right? In LA, I think it's for specific workforce housing, some veterans, some homeless shelters, and some more schools and campuses and stuff that they've used in projects. But let's talk about your insight on that type of, you know, technology or construction tech that hopefully more developers will use. Are you exposing some of your clients to that if the challenge is going to be, while building costs are a little bit too much, but you see an opportunity and go and give them that? option, right? To see if
Right.
that'll work and pencil for that project.
So I think there's different ways to do it, and there's even different applications, like depending on if you're at the TI phase of your project or if you're at the ground up phase of your project. So the developer I used to work for in Arizona is actually spearheading some student housing that's going with that. And I think, we're going to see it start in the institutional world and trickle down with the modular stuff. But I think we're kind of at that precipice there where it's starting to make sense. And it's because the construction costs are so high. I mean, we're already fighting land costs in California, and now we're fighting construction costs.
Right.
So it's definitely a viable solution in a lot of ways. And then kind of like on the TI tenant side, like, when you're going inside with your build, I think there's a lot of modular work that can be done, especially in the office world. Like the modular office stuff it's such a cheaper way to do it. And then a lot of people don't think about some of that stuff. You can depreciate it as like FF&E, right?
I see.
You know what I mean? Or I'm sorry, you don't depreciate it as FF&E, you depreciate it as construction.
That's
so you can get your investment back quicker.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. We're partnered with KTGY. I just had a call with them, and they actually in Irvine have a project they're working on, which is the taking office. They have a flex flats concept where they kind of already, as an architect, designed a way to take an office building and put the units more into the interior, and the common spaces will be, naturally storage or however way you want to play that, home office space, shared communal space, stuff like that. But they have a live project that they're doing in Irvine, which is super cool. And I'm waiting to see that project actually get built and topped out, because I think that will, sometimes developers actually need to see an actual project physically to go, well, okay, I'm now willing to do something like that or look for that. So
yeah, right. I mean, why do it if it's not prudent,
Yeah, exactly. So now I guess that was the segue for office, and I guess hotels, motels, and of course these are all city specific, community specific, the entitlement. There's so many variables there, but if there is a pathway, I think adaptive reuse is also something that maybe developers or investors should look for and add to their portfolio instead of their atypical projects that we talked about, right? Like, 150, 200, institutional is going to get behind something like that. It pencils, but I mean, we can't just look for those projects, right? In their portfolio. So I now just speak to, Brick+Work as a company. What we're trying to do is introduce, and I'm getting this recently, even this year, a lot of fix and flippers are asking me, well, what do you recommend? Should, we have the capital, we've done 20, 30, 40 projects plus in the single family space, right? Which is going to be different. They understand, but they think it's too different. They think it's too much of a mountain or a hurdle, too much money being put out there for a mistake. And if they make that mistake, it's just the project's done and over. And maybe, but they're asking me, how can they step forward? And I always say, work with someone like you, right? Like that has that experience, that can project manage. They have the capital. They kind of understand GCs and subs and taking something. It's just a different type of build, right? Versus it's a bigger scale, maybe. But what kind of advice would you give the new crop of developers, the fix and flippers that are in real estate? They have capital. They've amassed investors now that want to do maybe a bigger project, a 20, 30 unit or a 50 unit versus maybe even 150. What would be your game plan or your advice to someone like that?
So I think to mitigate that construction risk, you really just have to be with people who have done the work in the space and that you trust. When I help an owner go look for contractors, I've obviously got those relationships, but you want to talk to your three guys that can do the work and they can back up your performance, and they're willing to. Yeah. And the construction world is not ashamed of being a partner early on in the process. And I think the earlier you understand your soft costs and your hard costs, especially your hard costs, you're going to mitigate that risk all day long.
Got it. And so basically be open to partnering and not be afraid of coming into this space is what I'm saying. Because I think there's that barrier and wall. Like we felt it when we were pitching Brick+Work to residential agents. Like they were just like, look, commercial is commercial. It's a wall. Right. And I'm like, well, we're here to help you climb over that wall or break the wall altogether, right? It's not like, it's not impossible, let's just say. You just got to have a willingness to be flexible and learn. But again, I think that also speaks to the fix and flippers and the investors that were doing the luxury spec, because that market got soft. Obviously, a lot of that property that is now sitting 2-3 years plus. And so I'm telling them, work with someone like you, work with someone that has experience with marquee projects, so they know the A to Z soup to nuts, and maybe only takes 1 or 2 projects to get acclimated, and they'd be willing to now do more at scale, right? But it always takes that first one.
It takes time, and it's a big risk because there's so many unknowns, and you haven't worked in that space before. But I think if you put the right team together, it's very much accomplishable, and you got to just trust your team and have the right people in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyone that wants to get a hold of Cameron, I'm going to put all the links to his LinkedIn and his email. So, but yeah, I really think this is an opportunity this year. We're on our end, while we're prospecting, marketing to real estate investors and developers. Funny enough, those emails that we were sending to the bigger developers, the local, the CIM group, the city views of LA, we're getting forwarded to spec developers from Bel Air and Beverly Hills. So we've been getting responses like, hey, so, what kind of support do you guys provide a spec developer that never did a big mixed use side, or, what I'm saying, housing? And so I think we're going to be directing them to you, and hopefully you can get more business out of it. So, okay, cool. So I think we'd like, for our first episode to be right to the point. So I really wanted to, one other thing I want to discuss with you is now, so, all of our podcast episodes last year was really in the midst of all these shutdowns and what's real estate looking like for 2021 and above and beyond. Now, what's your take in retail, in what you're doing, specialized retail, these, look, I went to South Coast Plaza with my family just last weekend, this Saturday. It was my first time, I was physically able to get out, and I went out. And when I go to places like that, they're destination retail. I think this whole e-commerce, Amazon disrupting, that's fine, but where are we gonna go, right? You might change the things. Maybe it's not an AMC that's anchored anymore in a shopping mall. That was the 90s, version of getting people to first get there, and then while they're watching a movie or waiting for a movie, maybe they could shop and eat, right? So that was the whole premise of that. Maybe it's VR, maybe, who knows, right? Because people are experimenting now. Mace Rich, I think they're trying to figure out, is VR the new in thing that's gonna anchor? I think it's just gonna be some really good restaurants, some social space, place where kids could play. Does that make sense? Like, it's still gonna happen. So what are your thoughts?
So I'll take the tack that I learned at Caruso, and it's that the world is changing. Amazon is going to win on the just stuff you're trying to buy every day, the shopping. And it's like, I know we've all been to the store and we're just furious that they don't have what we want. And it's like they're a brick and mortar store. Then you're just ending up going to Amazon anyway. Right. So I think the way you beat that with destination retail is experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like with Palisades Village, that experience is like top notch. It's unbeatable. South Coast Plaza, you're going there because it's South Coast Plaza. Right. And I think those experiences aren't going to go away, and we need to lean harder into that. And it's very unfortunate what's happened in the restaurant world, but I think that this new, how much has been broken down is going to provide like a new leaf for things to grow out of. And it's going to be really positive. It can be harnessed properly. Yeah, agreed. I mean, look, it had to get disrupted. There are going to be ghost kitchens out there. They're scaling that way, but it does not mean restaurants die as they are. I think you got to make some adjustments. I think people are going to require space now and not be cramped. And maybe that's going to be an after effect or like preparing for the next. So by all means, but we're still going to need those communal restaurant spaces, right? At scale, at retail, at everywhere. So, well, and even some of the QSR guys have been just killing it in COVID. It's case by case, but some of them are doing great. Yeah, agreed. All right, so I think that's it. A final takeaway. So given all the kind of landscape of LA, and you and me, we love LA, we want to see it thrive, we want to see housing being solved in multitude of ways, right? I mean, all of that is going to happen at scale. And given
we're still kind of in the midst of COVID, but then we see kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And then I think people are gonna post-vaccination start flocking in everywhere, every place, and really doing that. So what's your final takeaway you want to give to our audience? Like I said, I really brought up heavily the new real estate investor that wants to get into development, but then we also have a lot of brokers watching this as well.
Yeah, well, obviously, and the brokers all know, the world's changing, right? I mean, it's not, the square footage is just shifting a little bit to industrial, or shifting a little bit here with ghost kitchens or there, but it's still the same thing. And I think once we get our footing and figure out how the world's going to work post-COVID, it's just going to be room for growth. And I think having that level of confidence is important in making sure, LA, the economy, and I'll just throw it out there, especially Long Beach, is going to do really well in the future.
Yeah, I love Long Beach. I mean, just for the audience and brokers, you really need to look for Long Beach projects moving forward. I mean, obviously come to Brick+Work and get a report, and we'll provide everything that tells you what you can build. But the floor area ratio in the Long Beach downtown plan, we see opportunity in Midtown. Midtown is poised really to get some big projects. So obviously, reach out to us. We'll connect you to Cameron, and you'll look for your next project through us. So thank you so much, Cameron. Really appreciate it. I know we were kind of working on scheduling this. We finally found the time to do so. I'm so glad that we did, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.